All right, everybody, welcome to the live stream. If you were just in the live stream with Scott Walter, Cern Basher, and John Gibbs, we just did a demo. We just showed the demo of Figure Robotics. Thank you for joining us. I've got my regular live stream we do every Wednesday here with Brian from Future Aza, Hans from Hansi Nelson. And today we're going to be talking about all the things that Tesla does that is in many ways, all the ways that they are actually ahead of anyone else. Let's go through the list. There's a huge long list. And we just want to, make sure we keep in mind there's so much that Tesla's doing. So who wants to start this off? Brian, did you want to do that?
Oh my gosh, there's so much going on. I want to hear what Hans has to say. I tend to talk over him, and that just isn't fair. We're doing this live on several different platforms, several different channels, and it's just not right. You go first, my friend.
Oh man, putting me on the spot. So I would say the biggest thing that I'm still watching here for Tesla is full self-driving version 12. And we know that they did start to roll out 12.3. And that's a big deal because we know that, 12.2.1 had some safety issues. And so it's good to see that. And now the question is, how wide is it? And we haven't seen anything to indicate that it's rolling out past the same size beta fleet that 12.2.1 rolled out to. And so, yeah, it's the most exciting thing, but also the most important thing to keep track of. And, on top of that, obviously there's a whole host of things that Tesla's moving forward on. Energy is a huge positive that they're executing on this year. Even though the financials, are something that lags behind. And I wish that we had better visibility into what the profitability of energy is going to look like so that we can actually do a better job of modeling that in the future. I know that there are definitely some Wall Street analysts that are doing that, but it's still not something that probably most investors really have on their radar, even though some of the retail investors are thinking, ahead on this one. And then obviously, what they need to be working on in the background that I'm sure that they're doing, and we just don't have visibility into it, is bringing the next generation vehicle platform to manufacturing as soon as humanly possible.
Yeah. You're on mute.
There's so much going on. It's very exciting. The thing that I love today, the big news. Oh, Wells Fargo slashed their price target. Look, this guy's a 5% analyst. He's in the bottom 5% of analysts. If you put money with him and you lose money, I don't know what to tell you except you expected it. There's so much going on right now. We've got the factories. Shanghai's cranking out good numbers. Berlin's back in action. The Germany numbers, the Europe numbers are still looking good. The Cybertruck production continues to increase, which means we're seeing a lot of, which means the 4680 ramp must be going well if they have enough batteries to build them. So they're firing on all cylinders, I guess is the wrong metaphor. Shooting on all electrons, maybe. This is, there's a lot going on. And to me, the big thing is, it's increasingly clear how everyone is playing follow the leader, and the leader is Tesla, whether it's the mega castings, whether it's the bots, whether it's the structural battery. Tesla was the first company to put batteries in the floor instead of try and squeeze them into the transmission tunnel or the trunk. So they're starting to wake up to this. Ford and Toyota are looking to get into the unboxed game, and they are making big strides in that regard. It's exciting to see things. It's like the thing with the Apple. They made fun of it. They always made fun of it. Oh, no keyboard? That's crazy. Well, now it's everything. Getting rid of the headphone jack. We'll never do that until next year when, of course, we do. Not giving everyone a charger every time they buy a phone. That's just, how cheap can you be? It turns out I've already got 10 of them. I don't need another 10. And I use inductive charging everywhere I go, so it doesn't matter either way. This is a leader. And would you rather invest with a leader or a laggard? And I'm always a fan of the leaders, I guess.
Yeah, I guess the topic today, right, is like, in what ways is Tesla leading? And so I guess I think one way to do this is think about the markets first. So let's talk about the auto market. If they're in the auto market, what I made a comment about yesterday was I think that Tesla's leading in factories. I'd love to you guys to tell me if you agree that that's the case. Are they more automated than anybody else out there? Do they the things that, of course, how they manufacture the cars has been talked about a lot with gigacasting, and others are now copying that with now steer by wire, 48 volt, all those things, and how they manufacture, but the factory themselves, right? And then they're adding autonomous. And so if you're a car manufacturer and you don't have an autonomous plan, you could become completely disrupted pretty easily. So everybody's trying to rush to do that, but Tesla seems to be a leader there. I think most people will agree that's the case. Now, if you add in the robots, the humanoid bots, Jeff Lutz was saying that about 10 to 15% of a factory building cars is labor. And so it's not going to be this massive impact, but it's going to be significant. And Cern Basher has run some numbers and showed that the margins for Tesla's auto business will skyrocket, will be so high when humanoids, even just a million bots, once they get to that level, it has much more than just a 5%, 10% impact to margins. It's going to be significant. So, but if you aren't an auto manufacturer that doesn't have the factory as automated as Tesla has, and all the technology they're introducing, if you don't have autonomy, which just by itself alone can disrupt and wipe out any other auto car company out there, and then you don't have the bots. Let's say you do have about the factories plus the autonomy. But then if you don't have the bots, it's like the cost is so low for Tesla to produce this. Let's talk about auto first, and then we'll go through other industries. What's your comments on what I just said there?
Well, I'll take the lead on this one. There's automation is a big key. Making things easier to build is a big key. But what's better than automating all these steps is removing all the steps. And that's what the gigacasting did. Why have 150 perfect robots when you can just have a casting that comes out right every time? It's a pass-fail situation, and it passes almost all the time. So that's get rid of the bots. Other factories, you look at something like Numi, which is the plant in Fremont that Tesla took over, and it was the crown jewel in the 80s and 90s. It was the most efficient, most amazing factory. But looking back on it, compared to what Tesla does now, it looks ludicrously inefficient. It's okay, guys. It's okay. We can build this part here and then move it around the corner to the other part. Well, it only costs an extra $5. Who cares? Well, if you're making 1 million cars, over 10 years, that's $50 million. We're talking about real money at this point on a $5 savings. You got to trim those $5 everywhere you can. And Tesla's done it in a bunch of ways that others hadn't. If you look at an assembly line from 10 years ago, 15 years ago, you would see it was a line. It wasn't vertical. It did very little in terms of using vertical space, except where they had to. When they got to the marriage point, which is where the body and the frame come together, that was vertical because it had to be. But Tesla's got all their parts hidden in the rafters, being moved around by bots, while others are shuttling them around physically. It's grossly inefficient. And other companies are starting to learn this, which is why we're seeing so many manufacturers choose not to retrofit existing plants, but just greenfield the whole thing, start from scratch and do it right, because those inherent inefficiencies are going to pile up ridiculously over time. And I would ask my bearded friend to share with me some more. Looks great, by the way.
Thanks. Yeah, I would say that, one of the underrated things that at least doesn't get talked about anymore, but I think it continues to be extremely important, is the fact that Tesla's leading on innovating in the software-defined vehicle. And you can say that that's the full self-driving suite, but it's really much more than that. And like the 48-volt architecture is one way in which they're leading on a software-defined vehicle, because that is a level of integration down to the hardware that allows just a next level of software functionality to be implemented in the vehicle. You can also look at just their UI is so clean, and the way that everything works together. And this is also enabled by another area that they lead in, and that's just vertical integration that no other vehicle manufacturer is as vertically integrated as Tesla is. I'm sure that some would make an argument that BYD is very vertically integrated, and they are. But I would say that with Tesla's software uh, competence level, that would really even take them a step beyond BYD as well. And obviously, BYD is following the innovation that Tesla has done in this space more so than leading. And so, those are another key areas. And then all of that really is enabled by Tesla's leading innovation culture. And I think that this is an area that still goes under the radar. I don't know how, but just the speed with which they do things that are dramatically different than the way any other company manufactures vehicles continues. No one else is bringing 48-volt architecture to cars. No one else is bringing FSD to cars with purely cameras and a in-house computer that runs on the software that they have created either. And they're just, so many firsts that they do, and people kind of just don't pay attention to that fact, and they dismiss the importance of these things that are first because they say, oh, it's impossible, or it's not significant, it's not going to make any difference over the long term. But these things accumulate over time, and it's one of those deals where they're laying foundations, continuing to lay foundations, continuing to lay foundations. And then, when we get to the next generation vehicle platform, so many of these things that they have been working on so hard that don't feel like they have made that much of an impact yet to the business will begin to pay off in a large way very suddenly. And people are just not going to see that coming.
Right. But
I
don't
would,
they
I,
have? Mhm.
oh, well, I wanted to add to that. The software is the best, and it's a new approach. Just do it yourself and make sure everything works for you. And Volkswagen tried to copy it badly. They did not have I think management was the real failure there. They assigned the wrong people, and far, far, far too many of them. The software and other companies that make software are desperately bitter about it because they can't compete, because they're trying to make a one size fits all solution that's going to work for 1,000 different engineering teams around the world, and it's just not just not going to work. On the 48-volt architecture, that's a good one. They are absolutely leading, and they will be followed because you can trim $50 of copper out of every car. If you're making 10 million cars, that's $500 million over 10 years. That's real money. So then you've got, so how do you make that happen? Well, the suppliers have to do it first. We're going to make a product in sufficient volume that they will make the parts. It's called the Cybertruck. Then we're going to give the engineering report to all of our competitors so they can just design it, go to the suppliers. They're all the same suppliers. The taillight guys make taillights for 10 different manufacturers. They can supply the parts. They already know how. They're already on the same page in terms of the engineering. And what you said, Hans, about the engineering speed, it is magical because what they can do, if you're coming out of college, the reason you want to go to Tesla, the reason you want to go to SpaceX is because you know you can rise to your maximum capacity. You don't have great ideas that die on the table. You've got the opportunity to say to your boss, this might work. And if he don't listen, keep going up until you find someone who gets it, because there's someone there if it's a good idea. And so it is a different culture. It's a different approach, and it is being followed, and it is changing the industry. It is making cars better, cheaper, safer. This is the revolution we should have had 40 years ago. I'm just glad it's finally happening.
Mm-hmm. So I think we're in a position, right, where obviously you guys listed out a number of ways that Tesla is ahead in all these areas. But what they really now need to do is a couple things, right? Have factories, which they are focusing on, efficient factories to produce more and cheaper to produce these factories. So number one, we need to start seeing more announcements of factories when the economies flips, when they feel stronger, to do that. And then secondly, they need, imagine what happens when the business model changes, right? So right now you've got a car, you're selling the car, there's a certain price point. We've now reached ICE parity. We're about to get to the point where the prices of the cars will continue to fall while ICE cars continue to stay the same. That's step one. Then you got insurance, Tesla insurance. if that actually, that's been held back because of just, I don't know, what is it, 12 states at this point? I've got Tesla insurance, but the rest don't. They need to spread further. You combine, the uptake of FSD, margins go up. So now you can flip it that the cost for you to buy a car is going to be a lot less, right? Because even more incredibly less, because the margins will be on the software, insurance or FSD. And then eventually when bots come in, even further cost cutting. So this will, it's going to take time, but right now we're not there, but we're seeing it happening in front of our eyes. It's just that it's not yet this year. It's going to be several years before we actually see this. But when it does, I'm not sure anybody else could actually copy this, not even BYD.
I agree completely. There's they've got a lot of things going right. In a show that you and I recorded earlier that'll be running tomorrow or the next day, we discussed how BYD is growing incredibly, and they're doing it by keeping their margins very low. They're still not priced lower than Tesla on like vehicles. They do have some fantastic budget vehicles that are taking market share in a space where Tesla is not yet competing. But everything they sell at razor thin margins because they're still gross margin positive on their vehicles. It appears they're still making money, and if you're still making money and expanding your market share, the future is yours. But Tesla's uniquely positioned because while they are still growing a bit slowly, this might be their gap year, they are doing so with healthy margins, above industry average margins, and they've got all these residual opportunities. Like you said, insurance can be a long-term cash machine. The subscriptions, I do believe that when Elon said we will reach a point where we do not sell FSD, we just make it available as a service, that will be a cash cow. That'll be tens, hundreds of millions a month coming in for a product that is essentially finished. So that's my thought.
There was one other area that Tesla's leading that I forgot to mention that, I mean, it causes lots of consternation by most people, but as Michael Dunn pointed out, it actually puts Tesla in a good position competitively because it puts their competitors on the back foot. And that is they have been leading in price cuts. And they can actually cut prices more so than their competitors because they have also led on COGS reduction. And so when you are scaring the Chinese automakers because you are cutting prices too low and it's actually making it very difficult for them to do business, and we always hear that these Chinese auto companies are the most competitive car companies in the world, well, that actually says something about Tesla's competitiveness.
Yeah, I think the competition is not quite yet the electric vehicles. That's going to be quite a long ways. Right now, the competition is ICE vehicles, and they should. I welcome Tesla continuing to do price cuts to get it to be to be truly just unbelievably lower. And right now, of course, the issue is not just the price of the vehicle; it's the lease. That's what's been holding up Tesla this year. People are going, why is the margins, the earnings next year is going to be low? They've got to, you got to see the interest rates go down, or maybe Tesla will eventually get into the financing game and totally offer incredible financing options that are really, really cheap. They started to dabble into that now, right? But this is the thing, right? It's all about the business model, and I would say that that is one of the things that Tesla has that is absolutely leading years ahead of everyone else. So they were the first to to sell cars without a dealership network, right? They're the first to have the insurance that they're part of it as well. So this ability to and software first, right? Software updates to continue making the cars improve every single year. What I think maybe only a handful of other car manufacturers can even today be able to do the software update to continue to improve the software, the features that the car has. So all these things add up over time, and then eventually it's the business model that really changes the game, and that's what we're seeing. We're seeing the legacy autos fall and die, and they're going to be on their way out. So, any other thoughts on the auto market? What are the other things we're missing in terms of
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So on the dealer market, you're right. Dealerships were for 100 years the only way to sell a car, and then as soon as Tesla started doing it, they realized they can do real-time dynamic pricing. Airline ticket pricing, event ticket pricing, hotel pricing kind of style, where they can adjust prices constantly on the fly without having to deal with what it actually costs the dealer, how long it's going to take to realize those price differences. And then we saw GM go to their Cadillac dealers and say, look, if you're not going to be on board, we need to buy you out and end the Cadillac dealership. We're going direct. Ford is trying to spin off Blue Oval so they can do the same. Direct sales, it's where it's at. And then on insurance, we saw GM, I think it was a year or two ago, announce that they're going to also get into the insurance game. Once again, follow the leader. And for the over-the-air updates, Tesla was certainly the first to do that. But then we saw, I know Volkswagen Group has tried to do them without much success, and Rivian has done a lot more of them. These are all things that when you look at them, they just make sense, but they weren't done. And you have to wonder what the state of automotive everything would be. The gigacastings alone, there's a great follow on X, Luca Greco, who lives and breathes gigacasting news. He is the Jordan Giesecke of gigacastings. And every major manufacturer is either looking into them, has already ordered them, or is now commissioning them because they just work. And it's something that Sandy Munro had been pushing for a decade or more. He's got a big gigacasting frame in his office from a client that had him examine it 20 years ago. And the industry is just now waking up to it and pushing forward aggressively. And it's just very exciting.
So that's the auto market. Let's talk robotaxi and FSD. As you mentioned at the beginning, Hans, FSD version 12. A lot of people still don't necessarily believe that Tesla is leading here, right? They cite that there's many Chinese autonomy companies that are able to show these, demos as well. Not as many as Tesla is able to do. But let's break that down. Do we actually think that Tesla's full self-driving is ahead? And is it years ahead, or has some analysts think, oh, this will become a commodity that maybe a couple of years later others will catch up? How do you guys answer that question?
Well, I think, it's a good question and a tough question to answer. You really need to segment it down. I would say that obviously, Waymo has great self-driving technology that technically is level 4, but it has limitations in its ability to scale. And so if you put that extra caveat on there, an approach that is scalable long term, and by scalable, we're just going to have to define it as not adding a bunch of extra cost to your vehicle and using a sensor suite that's easy to scale up in just cameras and a computer, well, then yes, Tesla's definitely leading in an approach that, while it is only level 2 right now, it is long term the most scalable solution that reaches the most consumers over time. And their ability to then collect data off of their installation of a massive fleet of these cameras and computers also is something that really surpasses anything else that anyone has. So they're definitely leading in data collection capacity. They're leading in a technology approach that is scalable. And so far, the quality of their driver assistance system seems to be better than anything else that's on the road, whether that's Blue's or the Blue Cruise system, or what Comma AI is able to offer. It operates in a wider number of scenarios than anything else on the road, and at a higher level of quality and safety than anything else that's on the road. So while yes, it's level 2, I would definitely say that they're in the lead.
Do you need all that data? Do you absolutely need all this data that people say that Tesla has, and the data
So
compute?
I would say there's a minimum amount of data you need, and very few manufacturers have a path to even get close to it. You don't need 100 billion miles of data, I imagine. I could be wrong, and if I'm wrong, then there's only one leader. There's only one in the game. But you absolutely there's a minimum amount you need, and we saw Apple spend 10 years and 10 billion trying to make their own robotaxi. And the big question I kept asking is, where are they going to get the training data? We know that just putting out test drivers, like Waymo did in the early days is horribly inefficient, very expensive, and not very effective. You need to get the actual enough cars in enough places to make it work. And what are you going to do? Buy the data? Who are you going to buy it from? Who's willing? Is Ford willing to put in $1,000, $2,000 computer and sensor suite into every vehicle just so they can collect data and hope to catch up in 10 years? I don't see how that happens. And Hans is right. You can't scale if your sensor suite is going to cost, it was $100,000 at first. We can get that down. Yeah, but you're not going to get it down to the cost of cameras. Cameras are very affordable. And in terms of it being level 2, that's true. That's true. Mercedes already has level 3. I think Honda might have some level 3 somewhere. It's a party trick. It's not a useful product in any way. It's a local maximum. And the limitations on Mercedes level 3 are so ridiculous that it makes it essentially useless. There are very few, I'd say 3 hours in the entire last 4 months, over 6,000 miles that I would have been able to use it. Maybe 100 miles, 200 miles out of 6,000, I would have been able to activate it. But probably not because the weather conditions weren't good enough. So it's ridiculous. And yeah, data is the key, I think.
Yeah. Even if we don't get to FS2 robotaxi, right? Full autonomy. Let's say that everybody's right. That takes 3 to 5 years to get there because there's just way too many edge cases, right? There's magnitudes of edge cases that need to be solved. You need to get regulatory approval, all that. What do you guys think about the leadership in ADAS, right? This is security. So, obviously many car manufacturers have autopilot, the ability to do cruise control, drive on a highway. They have this ability to emergency stop if they see the car in front of them stop. This is a NHTSA requirement. And then a new NHTSA requirement is this thing where if it's a car coming in from the side, the car needs to identify that, recognize that, and stop. I understand that Tesla is the only car company that can recognize that scenario. And at some point, NHTSA is going to require that and make that a requirement. So if the other car companies can't figure that out, they'll need to license that from Tesla. But let's say it's just as advanced ADAS, right? Safety, the ability to not hit another car with occupancy network or this new neural net to be able to recognize that. Even if it's not pitched as self-driving, this is just simply this car will protect you and make you safer. Is that going to be, first of all, is Tesla in the lead in that scenario? Is it big enough of a lead? Will that increase the sales of FSD subscription, therefore increase margins? Is that going to create a differentiator between cars even further? People would rather purchase the Tesla versus another car.
I would answer yes, yes, and yes. I don't think that it's going to be easy for other automotive companies just to license Tesla's software, that it's going to have to run on the hardware that Tesla has developed. Now, they could potentially take that, design it into their cars, but the way that their vehicle design iterations work, it's not the way that these companies operate. They're planning the model years basically 5 to 7 years from now today. And so if they were to start rolling in that sensor suite today, well, then, it's going to be a long time before they can actually take advantage of that hardware. So I wouldn't bank super highly. It's not impossible, but I just wouldn't bet on a future where a bunch of other automotive companies are licensing Tesla's full self-driving sensors or technology into their vehicles. And I hope to be wrong on that, because that will really be a major loss for overall road safety if they don't. But I don't see a path forward from here to there that makes sense to me. That said, I think that they are definitely leading on active safety features, far outperforming any of their requirements, and really kind of redefining some of the testing even that various bodies do in order to try and certify what's possible. And that just over time should build up the safety brand that, Tesla's really replaced Volvo as the number one safest vehicle on the road. There are still not enough people that actually know that fact. But the longer that Tesla continues to execute that fact and make their vehicles safe, not only from a hardware standpoint, but even safer from a software standpoint, that will just build brand equity over time. Definitely make the roads safer, and people will gravitate towards that solution.
So if the question is, does Tesla have a lead on ADAS? I would say the answer is, well, it depends. What are we calling ADAS? If we're comparing it to Toyota's highway assist, they're both very good. They're both, I would say, as good as they need to be. So it's hard to have a lead in something, but that is a very simple thing to master. When George Hotz from Comma AI started his self-driving thing, he was able to code a reasonable ADAS system in a day or two. It was like less than a week. There are companies like Ford who have Blue Cruise, which is hands-free. Why are they not getting the same scrutiny that Tesla gets? It's not a safer system. It's just hands-free. Their eye tracking is apparently sufficient, and Tesla's isn't. I don't understand the difference there. Will someone license it is a harder question, and I think the answer is going to come down to no, because it's so integrated with the software of the car that they need to get all the software on the car running in the Tesla ecosystem, and I don't think other manufacturers are quite ready to do that. But these systems are already saving lives across all brands, and EVs are just safe. If you want a safe car, get an EV. You were saying Volvo used to be the gold standard. They were. And if you were to crash test a Volvo today by today's safety standards in crash testing, it would not get a 5-star, not even close. So if you want a safe car, get an EV. But if you want the safest car, get a Tesla.
Okay, good. We got 2 more topics to cover. I think it might be more, bro. Let's go to the bots, humanoid bots. Is Tesla leading in bots? And it's incredible. I've been doing a number of shows on this. This morning, I just did a demo, the breaking news where Figure dropped another demo. But listen to this. Here's the demos that was dropped in just the last month or two. Okay, month. Sanctuary, they showed a block sorting demo of their bot working at human speed, sorting bots with 2 hands at the same time. Figure Robotics, I just mentioned, they showed their bot able to autonomously manage a Keurig coffee maker. And then they showed the bot walking around in a factory, picking, placing totes. And then today they just showed it. You can actually speak to it using OpenAI. I can show some of the videos of that. Talking to it and understanding its environment, being able to pick up an apple, just you saying I'm hungry, those kind of things. Pretty incredible. Of course, Tesla bot, they showed their Gen 2 humanoid bot. They also showed autonomous block sorting, but then they showed it also doing folding of clothes, but that was through teleoperation. Unitree dropped a demo last week showing that their bot can now run, and it's like the fastest way faster than a human can run, and faster than any humanoid bot has ever done before. Agility showed their bot can now do pick and place for 7.5 hours straight. And then 1X dropped a video of their Eve robots. These are the ones with the wheels. They had 20 plus of them in a couple rooms, showing that everything that they were doing were all autonomous, including self-charging itself. And then Fourier was visited by President Xi recently. So all these bot manufacturers are out there. They're doing this. We've created this table. Søren Basher, Scott Walter, John Gibbs, and myself have a company called Humanobots, and we're following all of these humanoid companies. And you can see that, this is not in an order of who's first or who's last. It's just we're kind of trying to measure it based on certain criteria. Does the bot have commercial focus? Have they shown them walking publicly? Do they actually have hands and fingers and dexterity? Have they been shown to demo useful work? And then now this demo, can you actually show that you've demoed the ability to recognize visual recognition and also voice communication conversations with the bot? Can it do autonomous work, right? Can it actually teach it, train it, and then it be able to do things on its own once you've trained it? and then have they announce pilots in an actual client site. So this is how we're measuring to see who's ahead. This demo by Figure just this morning, and it's able to talk to you, and it's able to respond to you as you ask it what to do. In this case, he just basically said, "Can you what am I looking at?" And he goes, "That's a plate and that's a cup." And he goes, "What should we do about it?" And he goes, "Well, I'll put it into the to the dish rack there," and it knows how to do that. So pretty incredible demo. This was all neural net. It was filmed at one speed, and
on it. So I gave you the apple because it's the only edible item I could provide you with from the table.
Great. So based on the scene right now, where do you think the dishes in front of you go next?
The dishes on the table, like that plate and cup, are likely to go into the drying rack next.
Great. Can you put them there?
Of course.
See how he said, "Can you put them there?" It has memory now, and it knows what you mean.
All right. So how do you think you did?
I think I did pretty well. The apple found its new owner, the trash is gone, and the tableware is right where it belongs.
I agree. Thanks, Figure One.
You're welcome. If there's anything else you need help with, just let me know.
So I just did a whole show on it with Scott Walter and John Gibbs and CERN, and we broke that down. And this is pretty incredible. Corey, who works at Figure, had a long thread explaining exactly what's happening. Their partnership with OpenAI allows them to actually, let the vision camera of the bot recognize items and understand what you mean by your language, and then translate back what you said into text, it understanding what to do next, and then be able to do its own actions. And it's a conversation. Now, what we've got from Tesla is, this was the last demo video that they showed where it's walking around. This was in December, so several months ago now. So this is vastly improved from this. It could walk much faster, but you can see that the Gen 2 is much more developed than any other bot out there in terms of form factor and in terms of the hardware. Look at the hand dexterity. This is much more defined than anyone else has done. So they're clearly there. It's got extra sensors on the fingers. Again, there's been a couple other bots that show that they can do this too, but it also can manipulate things. And they've already done a block sorting demo also to be able to show that it can do autonomous work. In this case, this is teleoperation. They showed it folding a shirt. There's a human here controlling the efforts. The goal here was just to show that the hardware is close to design lock, because they are confident at this point that the fingers, the hands, the elbows, it can manipulate anything. If it could fold a shirt, it can do almost anything at this point, is what they're saying. And so once they teleoperated to teach that, that means they're there. What they haven't done is they've not yet shown demos of, the bot being able to do more things autonomously, and they've not shown yet that you can actually speak to it. Mm-hmm. Can Grok copy what OpenAI does? Dr. John Gibbs was on the show, and he was saying, yes, he's pretty confident that Grok will be able to do both what's the LLM, language learning model, a visual learning model, VLM, as well as LLM, and be able to integrate with it, what we saw here with Figure. But so there's all these bots, and when I asked Scott Walter what does he think, he says that every bot has their own specialty and their own ways that they're ahead. And so it's hard to say that Tesla's ahead, but in a big space I did just a couple of days ago, what people honed in on that Tesla is really ahead of everyone else, other than the hardware, is their manufacturing. No one else has been able to show that they'll be able to scale the manufacturing of these bots at the way that Tesla can. They've got useful work within their own company, so they don't even need to announce any pilots like these other guys need to partner with other people. And they have everything integrated. They have their own LLM and voice integration with Grok and X.AI. They've already shown that they can do autonomous work. They've got Dojo, which is the largest supercomputer in the world. And so it really is, in my mind, still, they are very much a magnitude ahead, but it's all these other companies are showing up and saying, hey, I can do this too. What's your thoughts, guys?
So I'll say that when Tesla announced that they were building a bot and they were serious, they were laughed at. A lot of analysts and a lot of even investors said, "I don't get it. Why? We've had bots for 20 years. They're not useful." And Tesla said, "We think we can make them useful." And just like with the Apple thing before, everybody followed suit, because if you look at the convergence of technology, a lot of things have come together in the last few years that can make this possible. Without the AI to make it understand the world and do things on its own initiative, you couldn't program. There's not enough lines of code to fill every use case. So are they leading today? My guess would be yes. We see companies like Figure releasing a video every 2 weeks. Tesla hasn't released one in months. And we saw how huge the leaps were when they would release new videos. It is reasonable to assume that what we saw in December is comically slow or ineffective compared to what they're doing today. And so in terms of a lot of the players on that list, we don't know enough about I don't know enough about their approach today to know when they'll hit their local maximum. Some of them will be pointed down a dead end and not realize it for some time. You can train a golden retriever to drive a car. It's not scalable. You will hit a local maximum very quickly, and I don't think that that's a good long-term solution.
So this is the Tesla bot walking, and they released this about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, and it's a lot faster. It's a lot more. This is all neural net now. You can tell that even the legs is be able to do things on its own. This is how how fast they are. And then Figure, when they released this, February 20th, which is 2 weeks ago, their bot's still walking fairly slowly. It still moves a little slowly. If you watch it walk, it kind of needs to shuffle to do the pivot. Shuffle, 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 turn around. Takes a long time to pivot still. And then it needs to walk, but it's still very slow. Now, Figure did say that the whole point of this demo was just to optimize the neural net, recognizing a tote, knowing where to pick it, knowing how to place it. The walking is able to do it on its own, but they did not optimize for speed. So clearly, you can get these bots to move faster when they want to. So, yeah, I'm just saying that right now Tesla is probably ahead in terms of its speed of its bot, in terms of walking at least.
I'm not worried
compared to
about
Figure.
Yeah, and I'm not worried about the speed of the walking. Like you're saying, it's going to improve. This is an early beta. Don't even worry about it. I love Figure's approach to the voice. I love its approach to the face. It doesn't have a face, but it does have an indicator, so you can see that it is thinking, that it is doing something. And I've seen people complain, "Oh, well, I'll be interested when the walking doesn't look funny." I don't care what the gait looks like. I just want it to be functional. These don't have, those are not human hips. I don't care. I want function, and that's what they're going to give you.
Yeah, I do think that right now Tesla is very focused on the walking. And I think that's because they have, they know that once, and it's not just walking for speed's sake, but it's actually walking for not falling down sake. That they want their actual Optimus bots to be able to get deployed in factories as soon as possible to begin gathering data and just improving the overall quality of the system. And one of the big limiting factors for them is they need to have a system that doesn't fall down so that you're not breaking robots that cost, they're probably north of $50,000 per bot at this point in time because they don't have the scale necessary to really drive that price down. So that is probably going to appear to a lot of people on the outside because they're not focused on the tasks as much, like Tesla is kind of lagging behind. But this is really an important step for Tesla to be able to get as many bots in factories as possible, as quickly as possible. So that's my take on why they are focused on that so much right now at this point in time. Um, the thing that they are definitely in the lead on with respect to their ability to scale Optimus is, like you said, it's the manufacturing, but in two critical and key areas. So their expertise in designing motors for their electric vehicles and then reaching scale on those really puts them in a good position to be able to design and then scale the manufacturing of the actuators for the humanoid robots. And those actuators really were one of the things that, from a machine learning standpoint and an understanding of robotics, a lot of the key work that was necessary in order to create these humanoid robots and for them to be useful was done. But the actuators were not really to the point yet that they could be done. And I think that's one of the things that Tesla really led out on was they said, okay, we're actually going to design these custom actuators. And in doing so, we're going to validate that the humanoid robot is a feasible project for people to embark on. And then that's when you saw a lot of people really entering the phrase. They're like, oh, we can do the actuators ourselves. We don't have to use these off the shelf actuators that are designed for other purposes that are not energy efficient enough to make a useful humanoid robot. It's that kind of just unleashed the space. But I think that Tesla's still in the best position in their ability to scale the manufacturing of those actuators to high volumes, high quality, high capability, low cost. The other thing that they have a great advantage on for the hardware specifically is just their manufacturing prowess and their ability to manufacture these things in general from a structure standpoint at scale. Then the question is, are they leading in software? And I would say that no, they're not leading in software, but they are doing a good job in software. That this software space just happens to be at a point in time that it is exploding. The capabilities of neural nets really open up a whole new vista of what is possible in the robotic space. And so there's lots of people that are exploring this space from lots of different direction, and none of them are in the lead. There is no lead. They're all just exploring different areas. The key thing to watch out for is, figures demonstration. If everything is there, if everything that they're showing is what they describe and is using neural nets and there's no funny business going on behind the scenes, that is an incredible display of task planning and interactivity that should allow just an overnight step change in functionality of a humanoid robotics platform. And so it will be very important for other companies to figure out how to match those types of software capabilities as quickly as possible. I think that Tesla has an incredible understanding of machine learning and an ability to implement complex software in their platforms. And so I don't have any doubt that they can be a fast follower in that area. And there's so much open source research that's all pointed at this right now that there's going to be a lot of energy that's put into figuring out how to do that quickly. And because the Tesla has a lead in their ability to scale the hardware, that as long as they're not way behind in the software, they should still be able to create software that is, it is, if they're behind by 6 months or even a year, they'll still end up being the first company to get mass penetration and really drive those numbers because they're ahead in the hardware, which is a harder thing for other companies to scale up quickly.
Exactly. Nice points. It's okay. So here's my thinking, right? So first of all, this humanoid bot industry it's there's a tremendous amount of startups that are just exploding into the scene. Many of them will die. Many of them will die. This is a lot harder than you realize. Having said that, it's also a lot easier than people realized. So we're seeing, initially people said that walking was the hardest thing ever. It took decades, and now every single bot manufacturer is showing their bots able to walk and doing demos where you can hit it and it can do the balance. Walking is a solved problem at this point. Now, the next thing is the hands. You got to look at the hands and the dexterity of hands. That is a leadership that Tesla has that other manufacturers, except maybe for Sanctuary, have been able to show that they have the same level of dexterity of the hands. The hands are very, very important if you want to do general purpose humanoid bot. Ability to use a drill, you'd need to have that, right? If you want to play the piano, you need to have the ability to, to flex the fingers. So the hands is important. The walking is a done deal. Well, hands are not yet been shown by folks. And then you've got, the LLM voice and teaching autonomous. Surprisingly, this is actually way ahead of, no one would have predicted that you'd be able to communicate to a bot, it'd be able to understand your words, be able to talk to you, will understand the scene that it's looking at, understand what to do, and then to be able to train it. And then I keep talking about this, but people need to understand that 3 grad students from Stanford showed a project called Aloha, spent $20,000 with 2 grippers, and they showed that just by teleoperation, them controlling those 2 grippers 50 times to do a task, let's say to spill up wine that's spilled on a table, or to open up and to press the button on an elevator, or to push chairs in 50 times, and they can get it to do it autonomously, 80% accuracy. So it's this ability to teach something either through teleoperation to simulation through just videos, it's proving to be a lot easier than we realize. And so the end of the day, what I think is this explosion of bots, they'll all catch up, and there won't be necessarily one leader over the other in terms of hardware. And like you said, even in terms of software, then it becomes the leadership in terms of, right, the data warehouse and in terms of the manufacturing and scale. And not a single one of these guys, except for Tesla, has expertise in manufacturing, and they would have to partner. It would take them years to be able to build their own factories, to partner with factories, to be able to communicate to them exactly how to, design to cost, and then who will be able to produce the most, the fastest. And then the market is so massive that if Tesla just continues to build, a million of them, and then by the time somebody builds 100,000, Tesla's building 5 million and 10 million, they're so far ahead. Again, there is no competition. Let's be clear about that. This is not like, the question was raised, I brought it up and I said, in what ways is Tesla ahead? We really don't need to think this way. We just need to think the market is so big that it does, even if all of these companies, all of them succeed, they won't be rubbing shoulders with each other. They won't be losing customers to each other for 10 years from now. And if some people want to say that I'm wrong there, let's debate that, because we're talking about the labor market, which is $40 trillion per year, which is 50% of the global GDP, is available up for grabs for the companies that are producing humanoids, general purpose humanoids. So the market is it's like the largest manufacturer actually. So
Well, and yeah, I would say the we don't know who's leading for sure, because we don't know which ones are the dead ends. We don't know who are definitely going to fail, though it's much too early. And we don't have a look behind the curtain in a lot of situations, at least not. And even when they give us glimpses, it's not always a complete picture. It's never a complete picture. But the point I wanted to make is that Tesla was the one who kicked this all off. We're playing follow the leader again. And I would point out that Boston Dynamics on your chart said no hands. Atlas got hands about a year ago. There was a video that came out. They're very simple hands, but they do have them. They're just, for some reason, Atlas always had tennis ball hands instead, which was very strange. These are exciting moves. I'm looking forward to all of it.
All right, so that's humanoid bots. We talked about robo-taxi and FSD. We talked about EV automakers. So other than that, what are the other ways that you think Tesla's really far ahead? I know you mentioned energy at the beginning there. So how about AI, right? That's clearly the case, that the stock market is not valuing Tesla as an AI leader, despite the fact that Tesla showed that they're now going to be the top 5 supercomputers by about now, and they're going to be 100 exaflops by the end of this year. Despite that, despite the fact that they have shown that they have real world AI applications in the, what is it, the 5.5 million robots that are driving around the world already today, and then their expertise in robots and their expertise with AI, still not seen as an AI leader. What do you guys think about that? When will people start thinking that Tesla's even in the game, let alone be a leader in AI?
It's definitely a show me that they have to actually see revenue somehow impacting the bottom line that is coming from an AI enabled product. So that will be the main driver. That could come from a couple of different areas. Going back to what we spoke about earlier with FSD, if they finally get the safety part of the problem solved, then they have the freedom to go ahead and start actually increasing the penetration of FSD to the overall fleet. And there's a massive opportunity just to exploit existing vehicles, not to mention, increasing the profitability of future vehicle sales. So that's one huge area of possibility. And then the other big thing that they actually have on the table is if they can show that Dojo really is able to keep up with NVIDIA hardware as far as training capability, especially when you measure it on that cost per flop metric. And if they can do that and they can show that they're scaling, then I think that does begin to provide some credibility to them as an AI player, because right now, there are a very limited number of options for these hyperscalers to get the types of chips that they want. You've got NVIDIA as the far and away number one. And then you have some startups like Grok trying to capture the inference side of things, and that'll be kind of an interesting competitive space to watch play out. You have AMD that's creating GPUs. Intel is competing in that data center AI space as well to a certain extent, but both Intel and AMD are really lagging pretty far behind right now where Nvidia is, and it kind of remains to be seen whether or not they can really go toe to toe. So if Tesla can actually prove that Dojo can keep up with what Nvidia is doing anytime within the next year or 2 years, then that really shows that if they're able to do that and someone like AMD or Intel isn't, then that is a huge win for Tesla.
I would agree with Hans on all points there. It was about a year or two ago I interviewed Matt Smith. He was at Good Soil Investments at the time. He's now with Rebellionaire. And I asked him, when is the market going to start recognizing the stationary storage aspect of Tesla? They've got these wonderful power walls. Megapacks are already in the market, have been for years. They're just not counting it. And his answer was what you just said: show me the money. Once the money is there in a meaningful way, and I would argue that this could be even a bit before that. This could show up in analyst estimates as soon as we can see the applied use case. If there is a situation where they bring in the investors and walk them through the factory, and oh, by the way, here's Optimus performing an actual task that had been done by a person in a way that's perhaps safer, perhaps more efficient, perhaps less error prone, perhaps it takes a picture of every time it does a task so that it can be audited and be part of the digital twin of the vehicle in the manufacturing process. Then they can look at it and say, hang tight, this is a real thing. This is worth the entire amount of payroll at least. Let's get it going. That's my take.
Yeah. All right. So we've covered so many things that we think are, where Tesla is leading. Do you know where Tesla's the worst at this point? The stock. That's the stock is the worst performing S&P 500 for this year. And so like what you guys just said is that all the things we said, it's all these things that will come. It will change the revenue. It will change the earnings per share. It will change the margins. It will change the complete disruptions of industries. And that's the bet, right? This is the bet where it's not performing well in terms of an auto market's depressed. But if it disrupts auto because you got robotaxi, it disrupts auto because you'll have bots creating autos, which is even reduction in prices. If it disrupts autonomy, right, and it disrupts robots, and then it disrupts energy, By the way, when we were saying that is Tesla an AI company, it's going to show up in a couple of years. Elon's already said that the bottleneck this year is the chips. That's why we're seeing Nvidia goes crazy. The bottlenecks next year is going to be transformers, and the bottlenecks in 2 years from now is going to be energy. And so these big giant companies, they need to start buying nuclear power plants. They need to start buying energy plants, and that's what Tesla is really well known for. So in 2 or 3 years, who's going to have the largest data warehouse that's going to head us to AGI? Tesla has a good chance to be there, but we just need to wait. Any last comments?
I would say on chips specifically, that reminded me of one that I forgot to say earlier. That is another huge benefit for the Tesla Optimus robot, is since they're using a derivative of the FSD computer, their ability to scale up chips for the mass production, which, I would say that chips behind actuators is probably going to be the second most important and hardest to scale pieces of humanoid robotics. And so, that's a huge win for Tesla on that standpoint as well.
Yeah, and I'd say that all of the pieces are coming together. All of it's at the right time, and yeah, the stock is doing a little not so great. But as it's been pointed out in the comments here and elsewhere, this is the only CEO in the world who's working for $0. Technically, he gets minimum wage. He just hasn't cashed the checks. He keeps them as a novelty. Maybe he'll wallpaper his bedroom with them at some point. But it's crazy to think. And once the new compensation plan is in place, forget the old one. That's a whole different issue. We still need to move forward with a new one at some point. Once that's in place, maybe he'll go back to posting on X about puppies and sunshine and rainbows, and it'll
Not
make
gonna happen.
all the people Well, no, I mean, but there are people who are averse to the stock because of their feelings, and I get it. Humans are going to do human things, but, at the end of the day, execution is all that matters. If the company is executing, you can only ignore a good price to earnings ratio for so long, and it becomes inevitable. So I have no concerns about today's price because my investment horizon is longer, and I'm comfortable and at peace with it.
All right. Thank you, guys. Follow Brian at Future Raza, and you got Hans. Check out his YouTube channel at Hans C. Nelson. Thank you for joining us. Talk to you soon. See us next week.